All right, hello everybody. So this week we were going to look at what's going on here in Latin America, particularly in Central America and the Caribbean. Kind of get an overview as well as look into Miami, and kind of get an idea for how that is linked up even with places like Africa. And so basically wanted to go through and study what's going on here. So the first map that we're really going to look at is the population map because it kind of gives us some keys to what's going on in the region. You'll be surprised to see how many people there are in Haiti, Dominican Republic, basically on the islands here is just packed with people. And then there's also quite a number of people in here in the Guatemala area as well as up into Mexico. Actually quite a lot of people in Mexico, but basically so you can kind of say that half of the population is almost on these islands as it is in here, at least from this kind of map. You can kind of tell that, and a large part of that is because of Haiti, Dominican Republic, and these 3 or 4 central islands. So no matter where you are on the planet, it's really important to think about population and how that basically influences what's going on with your bordering regions. So clearly you can see that lots of people in Europe, lots of people in Africa now, definitely a lot of people in India. You can see it's even turned black in this region. That's even higher population than they can specify on this particular one. And then you can see same thing goes in China. Quite a lot of people in China. And then this is actually down here in Indonesia. But when we compare these island regions, we basically are comparing, this is close to the United States, this is very far from the United States, but basically for Southeast Asia, a lot of people have been migrating out to places like Bali, Indonesia, and checking out that for kind of the nomad workforce, and kind of looking for digital places to work. So basically we wanted to look at the Caribbean and Central America as another possibility for that. Let me just see who's all online. So we basically have some people from Miami right now. We got some people from India, a friend of mine I just started talking with, and then also some people from Mexico, India, and some other places, and then Oregon I see here. But basically in America, when we think about working with people outside of our country, we really should look at basically Canada and Mexico first, and Central America, as well as the Caribbean. A lot of people just kind of skip over that and jump right to, like, say, Africa or right to Asia, when in fact we should really be looking closely at our neighbors here in the Caribbean and also in Central America. And that's why I wanted to look at the Caribbean, particularly tonight, to get a better clue for what's going on. And we want to look at the major cities in the Caribbean and kind of go from there. So let's look at what the major cities are and go for that. So Santo Domingo, looks like Havana is number 2. Port-au-Prince is also in, that's in Haiti. San Juan, and then you have Kingston. Nassau is also in the Bahamas, and then you got some other smaller. Trinidad, unbelievably, is actually kind of small but actually very important city because they speak English there. So let's go look at each one of these cities and take a look at them on a map, so we can see what's going on, particularly in the Caribbean. So what I usually do is on these maps, you can get Santo Domingo. They usually have a latitude and longitude up in the upper right hand corner here. So if you go there, you can see on a map approximately where it is here. But if you go here, they'll take you to the latitude and longitude, and then we can see. So this is basically the largest city in the Caribbean. And let's zoom out so we see where that is located. So you can see it's quite populated, right, this region in here. A friend of mine actually just married a girl from Dominican girl, and posted some pictures, which was pretty cool to see. But you can see down in here, this is basically the largest city, about 4 million people in this area. Now, there is a safety concern in some of these areas, so you want to think about that. Haiti is considered not very safe right now, so it's interesting that Dominican Republic is considered a little bit safer. They do have some pretty interesting safety things going on. So if you do homicide rate, you'll notice that basically Americas and some areas, particularly in the Caribbean, are not super safe. Bahamas, and then you have Jamaica here, as well as Haiti, and then even South Africa being pretty dangerous, which is interesting to see. And then some other places in Africa, which is no data whatsoever, so we don't know. But I've actually heard that some of the rural areas like Greenland are actually very dangerous. There's a lot of people with guns and weapons up there because there's polar bears, and it's not as safe as you might think, even in some of these safer regions that you would say are supposedly safe. So something to think about. But that's basically where the largest city is. The problem I have with the city is it's not very friendly to the port. So if you notice, this is their port right here. So there's not a lot of boating going along on here. So it's kind of like right along the ocean front. And you can see the airport's right here. So there's not a whole lot of places for boats as well as beach. So this happens in a couple of different cities around the world, like Manila, Philippines. But you can see here, the beaches don't really exist on this city. So it's pretty much highway. There's maybe a little bit of beach right here. Let's see. Let's zoom in. See if we can grab some spot along the highway. See what the beach looks like. So it's pretty aggressive cliffs, and some of this is kind of volcanic. Kind of see the kind of beach that they got. So it's not really swimmable right there. So there might be some other parts we'd have to ask the AI where do you swim in Santo Domingo. Let's just ask the AI that here. So I'm just going over here and asking the AI, where do you swim in? Oops, this is not part of a other project I was working on. Alright, so they got one beach here. So let's see if we can look up that beach. Let's see where that is. Alright, so it looks like you'd have to kind of go over to this side of the city to find the beach. And then right in here, that looks like a great little beach spot. And then see, you also have the boat yards over here. So we did learn a little bit here just by seeing that. Let's see if we can get an actual view of what this looks like. Let's go right onto the beach here. Aha, and it looks beachy. Looks pretty fun too. So nice little beach spot. Got a guy walking down the way with a couple guys actually with guitars. So that's kind of an interesting spot. So that looks like pretty nice. So, and that's pretty close to Santo Domingo downtown. But it looks like still a couple miles, so it might be hard to like get there. So it's not exactly right there. Let's look at what else the AI recommended for this smaller beach, urban beachfront. So this is more urban beachfront. Let's see what that shows. Dominican Republic. Aha. So right in here is a little beach area. So let's take a look at this. See if we can. So, first of all, looks like a very small beachfront, but it's got a little bit of a beach area. Looks like maybe pretty popular spot for downtown residents. Looks like quite a lot of trash in the water too. Something to think about. All right, so let's move on to the other places, just so we can see what's going on, and go back to the list of metropolitan areas in the Caribbean. So Havana, I haven't actually looked into Havana that much, but we're gonna go take a look at it right now. And then in the upper right, they'll show the coordinates, and then we'll go take a look at the satellite. This is one of the first times I've looked at Havana, but basically it's got a nice little harbor here, which makes it very nice. And you kind of see. So where is Havana? If you're not familiar with the Caribbean, let's zoom out. Let's even switch the map. So you see Miami's over here. It's actually basically 90 miles from Key West to Havana, about that. So pretty close. You can sail that in a good day on a sailboat with a good wind. You can get to Cuba basically. So we're actually very close to Cuba from Miami. I did notice that there was some flights actually not going to earlier. It showed something to Havana, but I guess not. There you go. So it's $164. It may not be a direct flight from Miami, but looks like it might be. So I don't know if they have those. Sometimes with air restrictions and certain kind of restrictions from certain governments, they can block the flights. So you got to be careful getting in and out of Havana. But basically $164 to get in and out. So let's go zoom in here and see what's going on. And it's pretty nice because you can walk along the waterfront here. And you kind of have an old Havana and a new Havana. As you can see, the ports kind of change a lot of that feel. It almost looks like Puerto Rico here because you have this like fort structure. You see it says fort here. Let's see if we can actually look out onto the waterfront. Looks like on this side it's more, they don't really even have Google Street View here, but looks like we can get maybe a street view here. Look at what it looks like along Havana. So this might be a pretty popular spot for a lot of people in Cuba coming out here. But again, it's not very swimmable, and you can see you got to jump out into the rocks right downtown. Like in Chicago, other cities, you can swim right downtown. So let's go take a look at what are the nearest beaches. So let's see. Downtown beaches. Alright, so 15 kilometers, so it's actually quite far to the nearest beach. But let's go take a look at this one. What are the most popular? What are the... So this is the most popular one. Let's take a look at that. Let's see if we can... Havana, Cuba. Alright, so that's quite far. So that's looking at maybe 5 miles. So you can't really walk that distance. You'd have to get a hotel or something right on the beach out here. But on the beach out here, let's see what that looks like. Let's get a beachfront view. It looks like quite busy beach actually. So with being such a populated city, basically quite a number of people right on the beach, and all Cubans. It looks like some white people maybe mixed in here, but interesting to see the beachfront, what it looks like. Not exactly the nicest beach in the world, I would say, but close and pretty popular beach. I'll be right back. Anyway, so basically we wanted to overall take a look at some other things going on in the Caribbean, but I'll just post this really quick and come back to you later on it. Thanks so much for discussing what's going on in the Caribbean.